Thank you so much for joining this session, The Power of Social Annotation with AI Resources in Academic Research. We don't have a webinar chat, I believe, for this webinar setup, but you can definitely ask us questions in the Q&A. So we love to get your questions. We have a portion of this session reserved for questions, even though it is a very short session. So I'll go ahead and get started. We would love to hear your questions as they come up through the slides. If you need closed captioning, you can enable it via the CC icon at the bottom of the Zoom menu. And I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Jessica George. I'm the Customer Success Manager for Hypothesis for the North American West. You may have been in a session earlier with my East Coast partner, Brian Malone. And also joining us is Kelsey Schaefer, the Education Lead at ITHAKA. And Kelsey will be presenting on JSTOR's new interactive research tool, and we'll be talking about how social annotation can complement that. So before we begin, I am going to briefly review the hypothesis integration with JSTOR. So you may or may not be familiar with this, but when you are setting up the hypothesis tool in your LMS app, whether it's Canvas, Brightspace, Blackboard, Moodle, and so on, you do not have to download every PDF that you're using from JSTOR and save it in your course. You can actually use the JSTOR stable link and integrate the reading into the hypothesis tool with the hypothesis sidebar using that JSTOR stable link. So in order to do this, you will find and copy the stable URL of the article you'll be assigning at JSTOR, and then you copy and paste that into the hypothesis tool. So as you are setting up your social annotation assignment, you will copy paste the JSTOR stable link in that window. You'll press accept and continue, and then the reading will load just as it would if you were using a PDF. There's some great benefits to using the JSTOR stable link, one of which is your library will get those access numbers, a more accurate representation of how many students and how many courses are using that particular journal and JSTOR. So a really great way to help support your library at your institution as well. So once this is finished, students can then begin annotating over their assignment just as they would any other hypothesis assignment you'd be using. So just a couple of reminders about why you might want to incorporate hypothesis social annotation. One of them is that you're able to scaffold scholarly reading assignments for students. So this is relevant to JSTOR articles specifically. We know that a lot of this is academic scholarly content that students might be new to. They might be encountering scholarly article genre for the first time. So you as the instructor can leave guiding annotations as students are moving through their reading, which can be really helpful. It is also developing students' metacognitive academic reading strategies for scholarly learning. They're leaving questions for themselves and for their peers as they are moving through the reading. These can be questions that you come back to either in the online annotation discussion, or maybe it's used as a foundation for your in-class discussion as well. Hypothesis social annotation is also encouraging peer-to-peer learning, so that conversation is happening in the margins, getting students to make their thoughts visible to their teachers and to their peers in a really productive way. And then perhaps most importantly, it's nurturing critical thinking and argumentative writing in relation to scholarly reading. So just one or two more slides before I hand it over to our Ithaca representative. So I just wanted to bring this up kind of as a preview for next session as well, because we do have the Ohio State colleagues presenting in the next session, and they have found some really insightful results from case studies involving pharmacy classes at The Ohio State University, really looking at the increase in undergraduate student comprehension when social annotation is used, as well as increased persistence in the sciences. And we do have this case study available on our website if you want to take a look at that further. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Kelsey, and you will just let me know when you need me to move the slides forward.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we can. I'll start here. So I am going to talk about JSTOR's interactive research tool, which is our AI-powered tool that seeks to help users deepen and expand their engagement with content on JSTOR. I think that most people here are probably familiar with JSTOR, but just in case, JSTOR is a not-for-profit digital library of journals, academic ebooks, images, and primary sources. Next slide. So the idea that we had was, how might we use AI to improve the experience of evaluating and understanding content? So what if users could actively interact with content, like test connections, surface insights, but we're not interested in AI replacing deep engagement and critical thinking. We want to look at how content remains central to the research process, not just another search result. So the JSTOR research tool was designed to support a researcher's existing content discovery workflow. The tool is supported by a combination of technologies, including AI, but also retrieval augmented generation, machine learning, and natural language searching. We started development on the tool in early 2023, and it's been in constant progress since then, with a slow rollout to aid our learning. Um, yes, early in 2023. I've got my timeline mixed up there for a second. So we've had this slow rollout, and we've continued to talk to the community and keep iterating as we've worked on it. So first we had individual beta users who requested access to the tool. And then we had about 300 early adopting institutions who opted in to assist with the learning and evolution of the tool. And now we're rolling out the research tool to all users at all JSTOR participating institutions at no additional cost. And I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what that looks like in a little bit. So next slide. It has been important to us when approaching this work to do it thoughtfully and in a way that maintains trust and collaboration with our community. We are thinking about this holistically and from many perspectives. So researchers of all levels, faculty and instructors and their students, and librarians and publishers. So although there are consistent themes across all of these groups, there are unique considerations for each one. But some key decisions that are in alignment with all of this. One of them is focus on the source. So the tool is designed to work only using the items that you are viewing or engaging with, and it only is on the JSTOR corpus. So because the tool response is limited to the item, hallucinations are greatly reduced, and there's a greater accuracy, and our environmental impact is lowered. So it's about getting people to the right content and getting more out of it. We're also thinking about traceability. We want to be transparent about how each response is generated. So in each response, the user is presented with inline references that shows where in the text, what was used, and links to the location in the source. And this is a direct connection for the user to understand the concept in the author's own words. And then, of course, academic integrity. The tool is designed to help a user find and understand the concepts they are researching while reinforcing the need for critical thinking and discernment. So faculty and instructors will be able to use JSTOR's research tool to teach and reinforce research skills, as well as appropriate use of AI in their work. All right, next slide. Thanks. With that background in mind, I'm gonna walk you through what the tool looks like. So during this, you will see the full experience that our users are getting in the current rollout. And as we're doing this rollout again, we're really looking at seeking feedback, talking to our users, and making adjustments. About 15% of all JSTOR participating institutions currently have access to the tool for all of their users. We hope to be at 100% by the end of the summer. So if you don't have access to it now, you should within a couple of months. Okay, so when the user arrives to a content page, you see the JSTOR research tool on the right. In its current form, the tool is designed to assist with three key user tasks: evaluation, understanding, and discovery. It is available to use for all journal articles and book chapters. We are still working to add it to primary source and image content. And if you don't want to see the tool, you can just toggle it off using the button in the top right corner. We've also made it possible for librarians that manage JSTOR at their institution to disable the research tool for all of their users if they deem that necessary per their institutional AI policy, and that's from the back end. So for those schools, the users see nothing at all, even though the school technically has access to it. Okay, when arriving on the content page after performing a search, the first thing the tool does is automatically generate a customized summary that describes how the text is related to their search terms. And by having access to this contextual summary, the user can quickly make a determination about whether the text is relevant to the thing that they're looking for. And we're seeing that this is a really heavy use case where a lot of people are using this to think like, this is what I need. And for each passage that is used to create a response, as I mentioned before, an inline reference shows the text that was used. So you can hover over the numbers, the citation, to see a segment of the text, and then you can also click on it, and the document will jump to exactly where that is and highlight the section that it's pulling that content from. So it gives the user a direct path to the desired part of the text so that you can have deeper review. At the base of the tool, the users can choose from a set of actions. For example, what is this text about provides an overview of the key points that are covered in the document. And then the rest of the buttons. So first, recommended topics. Recommended topics is designed to aid in this process of finding additional key terms and providing new paths for discovery for our users. So this generates a list of up to 10 possible related search queries based on the contents of the document. And then somebody could click on each of these to run a search in a new tab. And then we also have related content, and this provides up to 10 documents from JSTOR that are conceptually similar to the document being previewed or being viewed. This gives the user a path to more content, including those that are related but might not have come up in a keyword search. And this is also a different algorithm than we also have a related text that is part of the current item page. And so we're giving you like a lot of places to get to something that's similar that you might not have seen before. And now the most open-ended one, ask a question. So users are able to ask a question of the document. And this, of course, allows somebody to interrogate an item for the key points that they're interested in. It's kind of like Control F, but for concepts instead of words. And again, I want to reinforce that the tool here is only using the document that is being viewed to answer the questions. So this really increases the accuracy and reduces the hallucinations here. We're not pulling from all over the web. We're just providing information that's already available. If the answer to the question is not found in the text, the tool will not attempt to answer it. So through this conversation, users are able to quickly develop a deeper understanding of the text and the concepts within it. We see a wide variety of questions being asked, but most are aimed at developing a better understanding of the document. So, common question types include: does it mention this topic? What is this topic that might be covered? How is X concept discussed? What methods were used? How are these two concepts related? We also see questions like, give me an essay about this article, and we don't want to answer those. And we have guardrails in place in which the tool says, like, I can't answer that. And we've also recently added the ability to cite the tool itself in response to a requirement that we're seeing for students to cite their AI tool use when they engage them in parts of their assignment. We're still waiting for industry standards of what that AI tool citing looks like, but it's clear that citing tool use is part of supporting academic integrity. So you can cite your whole interaction with the tool or just a specific response. And then another option is to download your conversation transcript, which can also be used in this way. And you can supply it with your with any of the text that you would use. Okay, so now that you've seen what the tool looks like, I'll give you a look into some of our data to show you why we're excited about how it's progressing with users. We've found that research tool users are our JSTOR power users. So institutionally affiliated users, so connected to an institution, that visit JSTOR are more often um, than visit JSTOR more often than non-institutionally affiliated users, and research tool users visit even more frequently than affiliated users. So they're visiting JSTOR more frequently. And this pattern holds true on both a weekly and a monthly basis and remains consistent over time, even as access to the research tool expands to more users. And we're also seeing that research tool users are more engaged on the platform than non-tool users, which we see measured here in the amount of searches performed per day. And then we also see that the research tool users perform more item requests than non-tool users. So again, we're seeing just deeper engagement with the content and through like more searches, more clicks on items. So to pull everything together, we are seeing general excitement for the tool and appreciation for our approach. I think there's a lot of healthy skepticism from our community, but we worked really hard to create an experience that really benefits our users while also putting in limitations and guardrails. As I mentioned, we're working on rolling out the tool to all JSTOR institutional users, and then we're also watching and managing the cost associated with that. We are some things to come. We are working on building the research tool into the search page to help find more relevant content from the search side. And we're also excited to partner with librarians and other faculty to see how the research tool can be used in the classroom as a teaching tool, which is what we're going to talk about next. You, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelsey, for those great that great introduction to the interactive research tool. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you might be thinking about using social annotation alongside this tool. But I just wanted to remind the folks that joined a little late coming from the previous session that we would love to hear your questions in the Q&A. We reserved some time at the end of this session to have a conversation with you if you do have questions that come up. So you are invited to use that Q&A feature to share any questions you might have for Kelsey or for me. So one thing that I wanted to note going into these ideas is keep in mind that the Hypothesis LMS app is separate from this JSTOR interactive research tool. So as you are setting up the JSTOR article in your LMS to have students annotate over, the JSTOR interactive research tool will not be available in that web browser tab, let's say. Students would need to go to JSTOR to do that kind of individual interactive research work that Kelsey was providing a preview of. But we did have a conversation and came up with a few ideas about how you might use social annotation and the tool together in separate activities that maybe overlap or scaffolded activities. So we wanted to share some of these with you. The first is you can use these together. So, a question or idea that emerges from that hypothesis annotation conversation as a starting point for deeper exploration with the JSTOR interactive research tool. So, let's say that you have that initial conversation in your class, some interesting questions pop up for you. You might take those questions and then pose them to the interactive research tool for some more deeper understanding or kind of a jumping off point for maybe your end of the semester project or whatever it might be if you are a student. Using these together can also strengthen critical thinking. So, one of the great features of this tool, I think, is the ability to download conversation histories with the tool itself. So, you can download these conversations and then use those PDFs as texts for annotation activities. So, this could be an interesting starting point. Instructors could use these transcripts to prompt students to examine how effectively the tool is highlighting the key ideas you've talked about in class, and also identify what it may overlook. So, kind of thinking a little bit about the digital literacy skills that we want to be practicing. And with that, here are some other ideas for practicing digital and AI literacy with these two different tools in tandem. So, instructors could use annotation over conversation histories to help students practice prompt literacy. And if you have questions about what that might be, I am going to hand it over to Kelsey in a minute here. Um, but how might refining research questions yield different results from the JSTOR interactive research tool if students revise questions from open-ended to close-ended open-ended questions to close-ended questions or vice versa? Does this change the direction of the research suggested by the tool? So there's lots of creative ways to think about using social annotation in the LMS app alongside this tool that we've previewed today. And it looks like we have some questions coming in. Uh, Kelsey, was there anything you wanted to add before I pose some of these to you?
No, I think that's great. I think that there are some really wonderful questions that have come in that we could use as part of um, the beginning of a conversation too. Do
Great.
you want me to
Well,
start pulling any of those out, or do you see something that stands out to you?
yeah, you can pick the one that sticks out to you just starting off.
Yeah, we have one from Kathleen that I think is really thoughtful and gets at one of our points that we were talking about, the last one, thinking about how we can use these tools together to think about digital and AI literacy. So Kathleen is saying, um, she's an occupational therapy professor and charged with preparing health professionals to be able to clinically reason independently. So I'm hesitant to create opportunities for students to rely on AI for clinical reasoning and critical thinking about JSTOR content. And she says, I know this might be a me problem. I don't think it's a you problem. I think it's like an us society thing that we need to talk about and figure out ways of working with. And how can I strike the question and how can I strike a balance between leveraging the power of this tool without compromising clinical reasoning expectations? And I love that question. And I think it gets at a lot of things that we're thinking about at JSTOR and also thinking about more widely as working with students. And one way, I think there's a bunch of ways to tackle this. One of the ways that Jessica and I were talking about was using the conversation with the tool as a starting point to approach like a classroom discussion or a group discussion. So if you have a student work with the research tool and create a conversation. And then I love the idea of using that as the text itself for the social annotation, because you can say like what is the tool getting here, and also what is it leaving out, like what are other opportunities that a human might come up with that are different. And I think that that is a beautiful way of bringing these things together. Jessica, is there anything you want to add there to that?
Just on the kind of disciplinary front, Kathleen, we do have a session not in Annotate Ed, but specific to health sciences and nursing, which is taking a look at social annotation practices um, alongside, for instance, Tanner's model of clinical judgment. So different kind of
Mm.
critical thinking skills required of health sciences. So you might find that helpful, and we'll be offering that in the future if you wanted some other ideas about how social annotation might be relevant, and we can bring in AI when we talk about those things as well. Um, there's one question from Tibor, I think. Um, Hypothesis actually did begin as a science research tool at an open source project. So there is information on our website about that if you want to learn more about how different scientific communities are using the tool. It's not as the LMS app that we're discussing in this conference, but as our web extension. And feel free to email success at Hypothesis to just get some resources from us about that. Um, I'm going to bring up Nick's question, Kelsey. I'm not sure if you can say more about that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, our simple answer is our currently, most of what's on JSTOR started as a journal, digitized journal opportunity. Most of our content is text-based. However, we have in the last decade or so been we do have art store, so that's images and a ton of other millions of images on the platform. That's a huge part of what we do. So we started the tool by focusing on the text-based resources, but we do want the tool to be able to work with images in the future. We are just not quite there yet. So I don't know what the plan is with graphs specifically, but graphs and tables. But right now, that is not an option for us. But I would imagine that is part of the process as we get into images. I think it will be grouped in with that. And that's exciting, and I can't wait to bring back to the team that you were asking about that, because I think there's a lot of opportunities.
I'll try to cover a couple more of these questions before we pass this off to the next session. The question about annotating JSTOR documents with Hypothesis, will it only work for open access documents? No, this really depends on your institutional access to JSTOR, but if your institution has JSTOR access, then you can use most things on JSTOR using the staple link to integrate the reading into your LMS Hypothesis app. And if you have other questions, feel free to email us. Um,
And
and
I'll
then there's
add
a
briefly there, about 80% of JSTOR is actually available without having institutional access. So a lot of things you might still have access to.
awesome, that's helpful to know. Um, and then questions about asynchronous activities and face-to-face conversation. Um, We have actually a lot of resources on our educator resources page that I'll point you to, but a lot of faculty find it helpful as a starting annotations as a starting out point for face-to-face lectures, using it as kind of a mode of warm calling students into a discussion to kind of share what they've found in their annotation readings. So that's just a really general idea that I have for you as I'm trying to wrap things up. And to Farah, um, that's a great question. Focusing more on social annotation during course development. I think what comes to mind for me is refocusing on reading as not just kind of a step that students do during like online asynchronous course development is what I'm thinking of here, but really making reading and annotation an opportunity for authentic assessment or tackling specific skills that you're wanting students to practice on top of a reading. So those are things that come up for me, but do check out our partner workshops page. Free workshops all the time for workshops that are specific to that topic that you shared. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you all. We ran a little over, so I'll point you to the next session. But thank you, Kelsey, for this great session. And we look forward to seeing the rest of you in our other sessions today. And I'll go ahead and close out.
Bye.
Bye.